So I've had this board for a little while now. I did a whole 3-part video series on it. This Madrid board that I made. You can see it's in pretty great shape because I don't really like it and I haven't skated it very much. One is this kicktail. It's too steep. I kind of suspected this. Kicktail is very, very steep for a board of this length. I think it's more like the steepness of a board that would be like a small like street deck, something like that, which I think is where the inspiration for the tail came from. But the problem is that when you put, you know, downhill setup style wheels on it, you have reverse kingpin trucks, you have larger wheels like 70 mil. What happens is the kicktail, it takes a very harsh angle for it to actually end up touching the ground. And because of that, it feels like very, very awkward. It's too steep, so it just feels very awkward. Not only that, but when I go to do like a toe side, since my back toe is about here, sometimes when I lift my heel actually hits the kicktail and it feels very awkward. Second off, this construction is flexible. It says it's 8-ply maple, but if you spend enough time skating boards, you'll come to find that different manufacturers' plies are thicker than others. So one manufacturer's 1/16 inch maple ply is gonna actually be slightly thicker than others. The thicker the board is, the stiffer it's gonna be. Now it's not like crazy flexible. I'm not gonna do like a jump test on it because I don't wanna mount it up right now, but it's noticeable when I'm skating. And I just don't like that feeling of the flex, especially when you are, you know, trying to go for like your big slide of the sesh or something like that. I don't want to feel any sort of flexiness. And this isn't even like that big of a wheelbase. It's like 23. So, you know, the shorter the wheelbase, the less flexy it's gonna be. I'm gonna chop it again. Now, when I first was thinking about chopping it, I was gonna make it into like a cruiser, you know, like a little skinny kicktail, single kick board. But one, I don't really like the kicktail on this board, I've already said. And two, I don't really live in an area where a cruiser is something I'm ever gonna use. The only time I'm gonna use a cruiser is when I am actually like leaving my house on the board to go just do something fun. I don't live in an urban area. I don't even live in an area that's like suburban where you can skate from your house. My neighborhood is like surrounded by major roads, which is a problem in and of itself. But I decided, since this concave, minus the kicktail, but the actual concave itself is the same as the other Madrid boards in their downhill lineup, I'm gonna make a little tiny race board. It's not very stiff, I've already said that, so I'll probably have to add some carbon in the long run, but for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and chop the shape and do something a little wonky at the end. We'll see. So I've got enough of the paint off at this point to draw the shape. So I just kind of wanted to get it down to where I start to see that center line that I drew when I was actually doing the building, because everything that I measure has to go off of that center line. So, time to commit a little sacrilege, cut this tail off, and then design a shape. All right, so the chop part of this is done. It looks something like this. So went with a somewhat typical, kind of maybe a little bit more rounded in the nose, got a little goofy with the tail. You know, a race board, the tail doesn't really matter that much, so you can do whatever you want and get creative with it. What I did change quite a bit was the width. I think I was down from like 9.4 down to 8.75 at the front. Maybe even a little narrower. It might be like 8.6 and then like 8.75 at the back, around that. Then 9.25 at its widest. And then wheelbase wise, it is at its smallest. The front is still the same, wheel wells, same flush, didn't change it. At the back, I brought it in a little bit. I have some more options here. I think the longest is like 22.5 and the smallest is now 21.5. So routed it out, brought the wheel wells out a little bit wider. I think it looks pretty good overall. Definitely would love to have more meat here in the tail, but you know, nothing's gonna hit this since it's a swallowtail. Nothing's gonna really hit that anyway. So
doesn't really matter that much. Now for the actual unique or cool part of this. Rocket, the brand, they created the Rhino Racetail. And I've always thought that torque blocks, while I like them, they feel good in the right board, I always feel like they're a little weird just kind of seeing all this gear. I'm not even like a big foot stop person. I don't really like seeing it. I just like the cleanness of trucks, wheels, board. The more gear that I feel gets added to the board, the aesthetically pleasing side of the board starts to vanish, to me at least. And I think the Rhino Racetail is such a cool, innovative idea from Rocket that I decided I'm gonna try and make my own. So you can see I've got some of the grip tape cut out, and I'm actually gonna cut even more off because I didn't film it, but I tried once so far to create my own Racetail. So here's how I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I have a sheet of 1/16 inch maple veneer, just kind of like what you'd use to make any layup of any skateboard, but it's just one layer. And I'm just cutting it into small pieces, about 5 inches long, then about 4.5, then 4, then 3.5, 3, etc. Basically a 1/2 inch smaller each time. And this is going to create this tiered wedge shape. And then I'm going to press it on using these guys, wood clamps, things like that, to apply the pressure. Hopefully I'll be able to sand it out to create kind of a smooth, but really stiff, not made of foam, torque block in the back. Couple negatives to this is it's just harder, right, to apply it. It's definitely harder than just applying a foam wedge in the first place. The other thing is you're not going to be able to change where it's located. I don't truly know exactly where I'm going to want this, but I'm just going to go for it, and if it feels great, it feels great. If it doesn't, I mean, it's whatever. It's just a board to me. It's just a little chop. Now, I actually already tried this. I just didn't film it. I was kind of in a rush. It didn't work the way I wanted it to, but I'm gonna try something different. It kind of ended up looking like a little mustache. So silly. But yeah, so it didn't really work very well. What I did is I put it down. I applied the wood clamps here and here. I don't know why it flared up. It could be that it flared up because either the wood is kind of like an older, maybe it's got some moisture in it, maybe it warped a little bit, or maybe I didn't lay it down totally flat the first time. I'm gonna try and solve that by taking a little 2x4 and putting that on top of all of the wood and then putting the wood clamps on so that the pressure is more evenly distributed. That's the plan. I'm also going to make the torque block a little bit longer. What was the last thing? I'm gonna put it at a little bit of an angle. I actually was gonna put it at an angle in the first place, so maybe it's kind of a good thing that this didn't work the first time. So I can try it again, new and improved. I don't remember if I mentioned it, but obviously there's negatives to this. It's not as adjustable, blah, blah, blah. So the pros to this, there's two. Obviously one, it's just kind of, I think it's nicer to look at to see a torque block that is more a part of the board versus an addition to the board. And then the other thing is that this is always going to be stiffer than foam, right? Foam is inherently squishy. Even if it's very stiff foam, you're still going to feel like a slight more amount of squish to it. So what I've got here is my sheet of 1/16 inch maple. This is very thin. I'm gonna leave my maple plug in the comments. It's like 20 bucks for 7 plies. It's like 21 or something like that, but it's really cheap for 1/16 inch maple. This stuff is super hard to find. I've looked many times for different sources of skateboard grade wood maple veneer, and it needs to be like 1/16 inch in order to press something like this, so it's very hard to find it. So I'll leave that in the link. All right, back to the actual plan. So you can see the strips are getting smaller and smaller, and I did it by a 1/2 inch. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, so this is like an extra 7 plies at the torque block level of the board. So all I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna score it a couple of times with this utility knife. It's not even that sharp. These are so thin that you can legitimately cut through them, almost through them, with a couple of passes with this knife. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, cool. So here's my 7-ply torque block. It's not glued or anything like that, but I'm gonna go ahead and apply this now. Now, right now it's very stepped. I'm gonna, once it's pressed and I leave it overnight, I'm gonna go ahead and sand it down to get it more smooth. I'm not really that sure how the sanding process is gonna go, but we'll get there when we get there. Okay, let's go ahead and remove grip tape. There's just a little bit extra that I wanna get rid of. If you guys have never seen an angled torque block, usually what you want is the side that is further forward is the toe side edge, so that you have your heel side edge when you're doing heel side slides. You kind of have a little bit closer proximity to the truck itself, to the bolts. I'm gonna use a heat gun, works super well. A lot better than a blow dryer, it'll go a lot faster. So I'm gonna take this is actually a 2x6, and I'm gonna place it here. Actually, not lengthwise, because I just realized that because I'm pressing it against a board that has some concave, if I do the block like this, then there's gonna be that kind of gap in the center where it's not gonna get the pressure almost at all. So I'm just kind of hoping that me clamping this into this spot here is going to be enough pressure at the edges. You know, that's probably why it didn't press well in the first place when I did the last one with the little mustache guy. That's probably why. So I'm gonna start with one of these types of clamps. You just gotta kinda push, push, push. It doesn't really provide like a huge amount of pressure though, so I'm gonna go back with a second set of clamps that apply more pressure. A clamp like this is gonna apply more pressure. It has the twisting mechanism versus just kind of like the trigger pull mechanism, we'll call it. Using one of these is gonna apply more pressure for sure, but yeah, I'm just trying to hold that in place for a second here. So far it's looking pretty good. There's a couple issues I'm seeing though. Now the glue is oozing out the sides, which is a good sign. You do want it to be coming out the edges. That'll obviously get cleaned up later. But with the problem here that I'm seeing is this, right? So we need for this to be pressed down a little bit more. And as you can see, it's just because the block is not on there. Pretty self-explanatory. So I'm just gonna take another wood clamp and boom, we'll get that one wrapped up. All right, so here's our Frankenstein looking torque block thing. We got no shortage of wood clamps on this. I'm gonna take this inside my house because it's like 35 degrees out right now and this is not a heated pole barn. I'm gonna take that inside because the glue will not set right at this temperature. Bring it inside, leave it for like 12 hours or so, and then we'll see if it laminated in all the spots that it's supposed to. Cross your fingers. All right, so the glue is dried overnight. We're looking at 12-ish hours, basically after like 12 hours with most wood drying glue projects, as long as it's drying in optimal temperatures, you know, like above 50 degrees, not above 80 degrees. This is all Fahrenheit. Sorry, Euro and the rest of the world. We're looking at just kind of the rough cut right here. You can see the glue that dried is definitely, it's visible, but it's, you know, it's not that bad. It's just like a little slightly different, shinier shade over there. It's gonna get messed up anyways. It's a skateboard. Let's go ahead and cut this out. We are. We got this beefy boy in the back. Look at that. Look at that. There's like, what is that, 13 ply? 7 plus 8? 15 ply in the back? That's nuts. And it's not even that tall. This is the Rhino Race Tail. I think it's like 7 on, actually no, this might be taller. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. But, yep, here's what it looks like. There are, like, you can still see, it's not like 100% smooth transition. I think under grip tape you're not gonna feel it anyways, and it was gonna just be a little bit more work than I wanted to do to get it down totally flat. So I'm gonna drill mounting holes. That'll be almost the end of it. All right, cool, we're all finished up. Grip the tail. Really beautiful looking with that really nice grip lines. Got it all set up, looks pretty decent. Can't actually skate it yet, it's not quite finished or even sealed. So not gonna skate it just yet, but I want to see what it looks like with the trucks, and I mean, come on. Looks a lot better fully set up, right? I think the distance back feels pretty good. I stood on it with a tuck. Feels pretty good overall. I might even knock the wheelbase back just a little bit.
further back, but I'll probably skate it at least once before I start tweaking it again. And yeah, I probably will put a foot stop on it, even though I don't really want to. I probably will end up doing it. Bada beep boop bop.